Hello, third year students. Today we are going to start a new lecture in romantic poetry about the Lucy poems by William Wordsworth. And we already are familiar with the fact that Wordsworth is one of the pioneers of the romantic poetry, let's say romantic poetry in English literature, alongside his friend Coleridge. Both of them were the pioneers of this movement. And part of the poetry of William Wordsworth consists of a group of poems which were called by later critics as the Lucy poems. Actually, Wordsworth didn't group them and say that these are the Lucy poems, but since there is a character which is common between these poems, which is the character of Lucy, so these poems are known in literature as the Lucy poems. So today we are going to study 3 of them and analyze them and see what are the common features about the character of Lucy and how they reflect the features that we already studied about the romantic poetry. So there is something that we need to know first about Wordsworth's poetry. What is poetry for him? And if we can call it a theory, what is his theory concerning poetry? Wordsworth indeed has an interesting theory about writing poetry. He believes that all genuine poetry, of course, this information is taken from Lyrical Ballads. This is a book that he has written with his friend Coleridge, and in the preface, we can say the introduction to this book, he tried to give a kind of theory for writing poetry. What do you need to write good poetry or genuine poetry? So he believes that genuine poetry stemmed from remembering emotions from a time of tranquility. Tranquility means quietude, calmness. So as a poet, you have certain experiences, you, for example, have certain memories from the past about certain things that happened to you, maybe experiences, and then you start to remember the feelings, you start to remember these emotions that you had back then, and you start writing about them. And it is important that you reminisce about these memories in a moment of quietude and tranquility. So it is memory that allows Wordsworth to retrace the growth of his own moral and artistic self. And it is both the content and the process of memory that gives his poetry its life, beauty, and power. So it's very important that you live a certain experience and then try to remember the feelings. Not write about it directly. No, you start to think about this experience. You remember things. You remember maybe the crucial moments. And then you start writing out of your memory. So memory actually is one of the main things, or let's say basic element in writing genuine poetry. This is according to Wordsworth. And we know that when we compare him to Coleridge, for example, his friend, we see that Coleridge basically relied on imagination. Since, sometimes a poet cannot all the time have recourse in memory. Sometimes your memory fails. You cannot remember. Maybe the experience is not clear in your mind. Maybe you are not able to recall the things that you are trying to remember from the past. So what can you do as a poet in this case? And I think imagination is the more, let's say, it's going to be a secure place for the poet in order to continue writing. And this is what I think Coleridge is distinguished for more than, let's say, Wordsworth. Okay, so the characteristic moment in Wordsworth poetry comes when some aspect of the poet's present experience triggers his recollection of a deeply meaningful experience in the past. So there is something in the present moment. Maybe you have seen something in front of you. Maybe you are dealing with someone. Maybe some event happened. And this event or this thing or this person suddenly triggered in you a memory of the past, and you remembered something else. Okay, and we will see that for Wordsworth, what triggers him most of the time, if not all of the times, is nature. Nature is very essential in Wordsworth poetry. It is not only a place that he seek refuge to in order to, let's say, uh, to have serenity and peace, not only for this, but also he believes that nature could be a teacher for man. Nature teaches you, it influences you, it gives you the ability, uh, let's say, to learn important things about yourself. It helps you to grow as a person, as an individual. That's why it's important all the time to be in nature. And for Wordsworth, nature helps him to write poetry as well. It triggers his memories and helps him to have recollection of these deep experiences from the past and write about them. So what we see in the poem is the active, vital relationship of the present to past experience. The process of memory in Wordsworth poetry is very often set in motion by his response to the natural world. So this is important to notice, especially when we are going to read the poems. We will see that in every and each poem, nature is present, is very important, is very essential. Actually, it is nature that helped him to go back to these past experiences and memories. Okay, so for him, actually, nature is considered as the great source of human happiness and fulfillment. So these two basic elements, memory and nature, are really important whenever you read the poetry of Wordsworth. Whenever you try to analyze his poetry, always pay attention to these two elements. How does he employ them in his poems? The first poem that we are going to deal with in the Lucy poems is She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways. And by the way, these poems, they don't have any title. So we take the first line and we consider it to be the title of the poem. So what does this poem is basically about? She dwelt among the untrodden ways, beside the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise and very few to love. A violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. She lived unknown, and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. But she's in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. So it's not a very long poem, and I think even the ideas and the metaphors and the figures of speech that are used here are easy to locate. So she, from the very beginning, the poet is speaking about a certain lady, okay, and he mentions her name in the end, actually, but I would say that using she from the very beginning, I could interpret this as the poet thinks that Lucy is important to everyone just like she's important for him. Okay, that's why he refers to her without first mentioning her name. Maybe he thinks that everyone should be able to recognize her. Where does Lucy live? Actually, Lucy is a beautiful woman. She lived and died young and alone. Why? How do we know this? Because he said she dwelt among the untrodden. Untrodden is basically means that nobody has crossed this path or this road. No foot has ever tread on this place. So it is a faraway place. It is isolated from people, and not only isolated geographically. It seems that she has chosen nature, a natural place, countryside specifically. Why is this significant? I mean, sometimes people choose to be isolated. You choose this. But sometimes you are forced to be isolated. And there's, of course, a huge difference between being forced to do something and choosing to do something. Choosing and forcing. These are very totally different concepts. So here, when we think about Lucy, we can understand her situation. Maybe she has chosen to be isolated in nature. This is something that she has chosen to do, because sometimes you can isolate yourself from people, but not go to nature. Maybe you are isolated in the town, in the city, you are living alone, and you are isolated actually. But if you choose to go to nature, this is something different, because uh, you feel that nature is the more suitable place for you to be isolated in. Why? Because there are certain qualities maybe you have that makes you feel that living in among people, sorry, living in town or a city or a village among people um, will make you suffer even more. But if you are isolated somewhere uh, in nature, nature that nourishes you, that keeps your soul pure, and this is something actually totally different from living alone among people. So I think Lucy, maybe she has chosen to go and to be isolated in nature, but she is at the same time she is forced to be isolated. Why she's forced? This is my own interpretation. Maybe it's not uh, what you think, but for me, I think this is the case for her. Why? Notice here when he said, "A maid whom there were none to praise and very few to love." Actually, Lucy is not appreciated. Her beauty is not appreciated. Her personality, her characteristics. What kind of person Lucy is? I mean, when we start reading, the first question that comes to our mind is, what makes Lucy so special? And why the poet thinks she's someone who deserves praising? Why she deserves praising? If you go to the second stanza, when he says, "A violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye, fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky." So, what kind of person Lucy is? Based on this description, she seems to be someone who's unique, special, very beautiful. And notice the comparison to violet. Violet is one of the flowers which I think does not grow anywhere, just in the in nature, in wild nature. I think so. So and it's very beautiful and it has a very short life. So Lucy, when she's compared to Violet, she has also lived a very short life, because he's telling us she's young when she is dead, and her beauty gone unnoticed by many people. She lived and died. She was a beautiful person. She was a unique person, but unfortunately, her beauty was not something that people noticed. They didn't appreciate it. That's why she was forced to be away from people, to live isolated from people. This is what I meant when I said that she was forced. Actually, someone who has the qualities of Lucy, the beautiful qualities of Lucy, cannot live in a society that does not appreciate her. And why society has become like this? If we think about the context of the Romantic period, the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, the changes that took place in society in that time, we would actually understand why society fails, specifically in this time, fails to appreciate people like Lucy, because it has, or let's say it was starting to become more industrial and more materialistic society, which bases its appreciation for people on profit and utilitarian basis. You are your worth as an individual is indicated by how much you gain profits, for example, how much you can contribute to this new and emerging industrial society. So such people who appreciate nature, who are as beautiful, graceful, unique as Lucy, it's very hard for them to find a place for them in such a society. That's why they go back to nature, because only in nature their qualities can be enhanced and reinforced. And if you notice the comparisons here in this second stanza, Wordsworth is using images from nature. He's comparing Lucy to elements of nature, a violet, a star. These are things that we find in nature. So being in nature also helps the poet to understand, or let's say to remember Lucy and to remember the beauty of Lucy, because elements of nature reinforce these qualities and help the poet remember them. Whenever he looks around in nature, he's reminded of Lucy. Okay, you see the connection? She lived unknown and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. This is a very nice way to say that she's dead. Ceased to be. Okay? But she's in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. So the only person, the only, the only one who was really affected by passing away of Lucy, of her death, was the speaker. He's one of the few people who loved and appreciated her. Okay, so in this poem we can see that we have very clear themes and ideas. For example, the theme of love. The speaker seems clearly to be in love with Lucy. And we have also a theme of death, losing someone you love in death, and how this loss is really difficult. And at the same time, we have the theme of nature and how nature helps enhance and reinforce the good qualities of people like Lucy. The other poem is Strange Fits of Passion Have I Known, and as you see, this is also the first line taken as a title. Strange fits of passion have I known, and I will dare to tell, but in the lover's ear alone, what once to me befell. So this is another experience of remembering something out of the memory, that Wordsworth is going to tell us about certain feelings that are strange, actually. See, strange thoughts which once came to his mind, and he announces that these feelings are going to be told to someone who is a lover. Why? Because only a lover like him, who has the same experience, will understand what kind of feelings he's having. When she I loved looked every day fresh as a rose in June, I to her cottage bent my way beneath an evening moon. So here we can think of it as the beginning of telling what kind of experience it was. First of all, he's praising his beloved. He's calling her fresh as a rose in June. She's beautiful. We already know that Lucy is someone who's very beautiful. And he was going to meet her in her cottage. At which time? And when he says evening moon, so we knew that it is in the evening, and not any evening, it is a moonlit night. You can see the moon in the sky. It's very clear. It is guiding the speaker through his journey. Okay, so here we see again nature and elements of nature, and moon of course is part of nature, and Lucy is living in a cottage, so it is somewhere in the countryside. Upon the moon I fixed my eye, all over the wide lea, with quickening pace my horse drew nigh those paths so dear to me. So as he was moving, he was looking at the moon all the time. He's fixing his eye on the moon, and of course, as he's moving, the scene around him changes. He was not going on foot; he was riding a horse, and the horse was quickening. The pace of the horse was quickening as he's approaching the cottage. And of course, those paths are so dear to him because these paths lead him to meet Lucy. Okay, so it is not an ordinary journey for him. It is a very beautiful one, leading to Lucy. And we see that he's keeping all the time mentioning the moon and the view of the moon in front of him. This is important. And now we reach the orchard plot, and as we climb the hill, the sinking moon to Lucy's cot came near and nearer still. So the scene is changing. Now he reached to a spot which we have an orchard plot. There is this hill they have to climb over, he and the horse. So what happens is that the moon's view is changing as well. So now he's looking at the moon, and the moon is moving down behind the cottage. As he's approaching, he cannot see the moon high in the sky. It is as if it is going down, down, sinking behind the cottage. Okay? It was coming nearer to the cottage. The more he moves closer, the more the view of the moon changes. Okay? So the moon suddenly, in the end, what happens? Let's see the other stanzas. In one of those sweet dreams I slept, kind nature's gentlest boon, and all the while my eyes I kept on the descending moon. So the speaker was thinking of this experience as if he's in a dream, and we all know that when someone is in a state of sleeping or in a dream, they are not aware of things around them, or let's say they are not in a complete state of consciousness or awareness. When you are asleep, actually you cannot be let's say someone who's taken responsible for anything, because you are not in your awareness. Okay, sleeping and dreaming, these situations actually, um, man thinks that in these situations he's free, and at the same time the consciousness is not dealing with any kind of reasonable things. I mean, you know, in dreams all kind of things that are unimaginable happens in dreams. So our speaker was in a state of, we can say, daydreaming, we can call it. He was not in a state of complete awareness. There's something that was making his mind busy all the time, and he keeps mentioning the moon. He's looking at the moon. Okay, so when the moon sinks from the view, okay, now we see that at a certain point the view of this moon which is descending is going to change the mood of the poem. My horse moved on, hoof after hoof, he raised and never stopped, when down behind the cottage roof at once the bright moon dropped. So he reached to a point as the horse was moving, and you see this hoof after hoof. This is a monotonous movement. Okay, and he's also, notice how he's focusing on the motion of the horse. The way that the horse is moving is monotonous. It is causing a kind of hypnosis, as if the speaker is hypnotized by this the sound of the motions of the hoofs. Okay, at a certain point he reaches to a point near the cottage, and the moon dropped completely behind. He cannot see the moon anymore. What fond and wayward thoughts will slide into a lover's head? Oh, mercy to myself, I cried, if Lucy should be dead. So the moment that the moon dropped and he cannot see the moon anymore, this disappearance of the moon aroused in him certain ideas, certain thoughts, and they are not pleasant ideas. They are sad, irregular, strange ideas. What are these ideas? Oh, mercy, what if Lucy is dead? You see, now he thinks that maybe now he's awakened from his dream that he was living here, and this dream prevented him from realizing that Lucy, just like any human being, at a certain point she's going to die. So loss of someone in death, of course we are all mortals, we are all human beings, we are mortals, and we are going to die one day. So this is just something that the speaker maybe has forgotten for a while, or maybe he couldn't realize because he was taken by his feelings of love towards Lucy. But when he was looking at the moon, and notice here how nature helped the speaker to realize this truth, to remember it. Nature here has taught the speaker something. Okay, so it has a really great influence on him. It has made him realize that Lucy is just a mortal person, and at some point she's going to die. But this idea has caused the speaker to be really sad and depressed. It has changed the mood of the poem. And from the beginning he was very happy, speaking about his experience, talking about his love to Lucy, He was living this kind of dreamy and beautiful situation, romantic kind of feelings, but suddenly in the end he started to feel depressed and sad because he remembered uh, this idea, Lucy's mortality. So it is important in this poem to think about the extended imagery of the moon, okay, the motive of motion, because we see that the speaker's motion makes him see different views. Each time he reaches to a certain point, he sees different view. The horse's motion also, and the moon's motion. So this is one of the important ideas, and we can build on this motive in our analysis of the poem. And we have the idea of appearance versus reality. Things, they are not all the time as real as they look or seem. Sometimes these are just fake appearances. Okay, fear of loss, realizing Lucy's mortality. So you have to think about these main ideas when you are analyzing this poem. Okay, now we come to the last poem from the three that I have chosen. This one is a very short and small poem. Slumber did my spirit seal. Slumber or slumber, I'm not sure. I had no human fears. She seemed a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly years. No motion has she now, no force. She neither hears nor sees. Rolled round in earth's diurnal course with rocks and stones and trees. It's very short and I think it's very clear. Again, he's talking about someone and some lady, and of course here the name Lucy is not mentioned, but it is clear that he's referencing her. So the speaker announces in the beginning that he was in a state of slumber. He didn't even know he was in. Actually, he was not realizing totally that he was in a state of slumber is kind of sleep, but not any kind of sleep, which is very deep. Okay, so actually the speaker was locked inside this kind of situation in which he was not able to realize certain truth because he was asleep, not aware. I had no human fears. So he was not thinking like regular people think. Normal people have fears. Okay? As human beings, we have fears. For example, the fear of death, fear of losing someone you love. These are human fears. And it seems that our speaker, because he was in a state of slumber, he couldn't realize these fears. She seemed a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly years. What is this thing that he couldn't realize? Again, Lucy's mortality. Because for him, because he was in love with her and because she was very dear to him, he couldn't recognize or realize that she's going to be influenced by earthly years. Time passes, and all creatures, including human beings, are going to be influenced by the passage of time. They are going to get older, and at a certain time, they are dead. Even if they don't get older, I mean, just being in this existence means that you are going to die someday. Okay? No motion has she now, no force. She neither hears nor sees. So someone like this cannot move, she cannot see, she cannot hear. It means that now she's already dead. She's dead, finally. Lucy is dead. Rolled round in earth's diurnal course. After her death, of course, she's buried in the ground, and after burial, it means that she has become part of nature again, with rocks and stones and trees. Okay, after the speaker's beloved dies, he seems to wake up, okay, understanding that his belief in his beloved's immortality was an illusion. There is no such thing as immortality for human beings. She has become part of nature, which helps him to reconcile with the fact of her death. So what makes the speaker finally, after realizing this truth about Lucy, to accept this truth, to reconcile with this, is that at least Lucy is going to be part of nature. Okay, Nature again helps the speaker to embrace this idea and to accept it and to deal with his grief over Lucy. Notice the difference between this first poem, sorry, this last poem I have analyzed here, and the first one here, when he said, "But she's in her grave, and oh, the difference to me." Here in this poem, it seems that her death was something that he couldn't accept, couldn't imagine, and he was still very sad and depressed. But here in this last poem, it seems that actually he has come to terms with the idea of death. And now he realizes that instead of feeling sad, depressed for Lucy's death, he can accept this idea based on his understanding that Lucy's body and her soul is going to be part of the course of nature and earth, the diurnal course of nature and earth. She has become part of nature again. So this gives him kind of solace, and he reconciles with the idea of death. Okay. So nature, here I'm focusing on the theme of nature in these poems. The way nature is glorified as a serene, magnificent place is a hallmark of the Lucy poems. Actually, it is one of the main themes in the three poems. And when we speak about nature in Wordsworth poetry, we are not talking, of course, about just descriptions of natural scenes or landscapes. No, we are talking about nature which nourishes, influences, teaches man how to live, how to deal with certain facts about life, like death, for example. A nature which helps man to remember, to recall beautiful things, beautiful people like Lucy. Okay, the character of Lucy could be understood as a symbol of an individual who finds it difficult to find serenity and appreciation in an ever-growing materialistic and industrial society. Actually, there is a debate over the character of Lucy. Some would say that Lucy could be a real figure, but when we go back to Wordsworth's biography and life, we don't. It doesn't seem to be a real person. We don't have any information about a real person called Lucy, whom Wordsworth was in love with. Others would say that maybe she represents his relation to Dorothy, because his sister. He has a great bond and relationship with his sister, maybe because of his fear of losing her. That's why he was talking about this idea a lot. And Lucy is just a representative of his sister's character. But some other critics analyzed the character of Lucy as a person who's symbolic more than a real one, and more than representing a real person. Not necessarily Lucy should be representing a real person. Maybe she's just a symbolic figure who represents anyone who's similar to her, who has the same qualities like her, who's beautiful, graceful, unique person, spiritual person like her, but cannot live in materialistic society that does not appreciate such qualities. Okay, so being in nature provokes the speaker's memory of Lucy, since she possesses qualities. Here I should correct this. She possesses qualities that are closer to elements of nature, like flowers and stars. Okay, other elements like the moon helps the speaker realize the truth of her mortality and embrace it in the final poem. So actually we can connect the three poems through the theme of nature. We can think of the theme of nature as a common theme between these three poems, and also we can connect certain parts of each poem based on this. She's now gone, yet she holds a permanent place in the natural world. This is what gives the speaker in the poems kind of solace. He comes to terms with death. He, let's say, embrace this idea instead of feeling sad about Lucy's death. Now he reconciles with the idea, and I think personally, I think that Lucy is just a symbolic figure, and she represents this kind of romantic ideal of a person who's all the time isolated, not able to live in a society that does not appreciate individuals for what they have, for their individual characteristics, for their own, let's say, qualities and traits. That's what I think is the Lucy poems is trying to represent. I hope that this was helpful. See you in other videos and explanations. Thank you.